right, this is chapter 4, lesson 3, multiply fractions. Okay, so when we multiply fractions, in words, what we're saying is we're multiplying the numerators and then we're multiplying the denominators, okay? So like you can see in a model right here, for 1/2 times 2/5, okay? We're taking two groups of 5 and we're coloring one from each group, okay? So when we do this with numbers, we're going to take the numerators 2 times 1 and the denominators 5 times 2, okay? In algebraic symbols, this is the same thing as saying A over B times C over D equals A times C over B times D, where B and D are not 0. Remember, we can't divide by 0, so the denominator cannot be 0. Okay. You can also simplify before multiplying. So, if the numerators and the denominators have a common factor, you can simplify before you multiply. Remember that factors are 2 or more numbers that are multiplied together to form a product. So an example down here, I have 2/3 times 5/6. Well, 2 and 6 go into one another. 2 goes into 6 one time, and 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. So now I have 1/3 times 5/3. When I multiply this through, 1 times 5 gives me 5, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. So let's take a look at an example. Example number 1 says find 1/3 times 1/4. Write it in simplest form. So I can use a model. I divide the rectangle into 4 rows. So you can see my rectangle is divided into 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then divide the rectangle into 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Shade a section that is 1/4 unit wide by 1/3 unit long. So this is 1/4 wide by 1/3 long. So I shade in 1 square. So the section that is shaded is 1/4 times 1/3, or 1/12, because there's 12 boxes. Okay. Method 2 is I can write an equation. I can do 1/3 times 1/4. Okay. When I do that, I get 1 times 1 over 3 times 4, which gives me 1/12. So either way you do it, method 1 or 2, you get 1/12. Okay, number 2 says find 3/4 times 5/6. So I'm going to multiply straight across. 3 times 5 and 4 times 6. I can notice that 3 and 6 have common multiples, so I'm left with 1 and 2. 1 times 5 gives me 5. 4 times 2 gives me 8. Okay. Number 3 says find 4/9 times 18. Well, I can rewrite 18 as 18 over 1. And I can recognize that 9 and 18 have common multiples. So 9 becomes 1, 18 becomes 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. So 8 over 1 is simplified as 8. Okay. Now there are a couple of try it problems, so I want you to pause the video, try them out, and then when you're done, we will go over the answers together. All right, now that you've had a chance to try out the try it problems, let's go over the answers together. So the first one I have, A, is 1/2 times 3/5. Okay, so I'm going to multiply straight across. I have 1 times 3 over 2 times 5. 1 times 3 gives me 3, and 2 times 5 gives me 10. So my final answer is 3/10. Letter B says 1/3 times 3/4. So I multiply my numerators and my denominators. I can notice that 3 and 3 simplify. So I get 1/4. Okay. Letter C is 2/3 times 5/6. So again, I multiply my denominators. I can notice that 2 and 6 can cancel. So I'm left with 1 and 3. 1 times 5 gives me 5. 3 times 3 gives me 9. So I get 5/9. Letter D says 3/4 times 4/9. Okay, I multiply straight across. 3 times 4, 4 times 9. I can notice that 3 and 9 go into each other, and 4 go into each other. So now I have 1 times 1, which gives me 1, and 1 times 3, which gives me 3. Letter E says 5/6 times 9/10. So I multiply my numerators. I notice that 5 and 10 can simplify, and 6 and 9 can simplify. So 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 2 is 4, so I get 3/4. Okay. Letter F says 3/5 times 10. I'm going to rewrite 10 so it is a fraction. Okay, so then I'm going to multiply my numerators. So I get 3 times 10 over 5 times 1. I notice that 10 and 5 can simplify. So 3 times 2 gives me 6. 1 times 1 gives me 1. So I get 6 over 1, or 6. And that is the end of lesson 3.